What comes to mind when you see the word tourism? Does the tourism industry help the local people economically? What is the link between tourism and the environment? How does the tourism industry commodify local cultures around the world? Hi, and welcome to English for a Better World. In this lesson, we will dive deeper into the question of tourism, and we will take a critical look at the tourism industry to see what's wrong with it. So let's get started. Traveling for a better world. Let's look at these pictures. And as usual, what story do you think the pictures tell? Well, some of these places might be familiar to you, I think. Some of them are called status destinations. Well, these pictures capture the theme of our lesson today. So take a good look at them and think about them. Think about the story behind these pictures. Now let's take a look at the highlights of our lesson. Turning tourism into a commodity is our theme. You will learn how to describe tourism. And of course, we have a new grammar lesson, present and real conditional. And finally, we will listen to a talk, What's Wrong with Tourism? Let's learn the vocabulary you need for this lesson. Tourism, eco-tourism, conventional tourism. Find the odd one out and give reasons. Upside, advantage, downside. To mix with, to understand, to find out. Exotic, glamorous, touristy. Alleviation, creation, generation. Local, worldwide, indigenous. Inequitable, sustainable, unjust. Now, to understand how these words are used in context, read the questions carefully and circle the correct answer. What are the pros and cons of mass tourism? It's a kind of a debate. So let's begin with Abdul. The main advantages of mass tourism are creates jobs for local people, labor jobs. Country benefits from the tourist, i.e. money, new amenities created for the tourists, which can be used by the local people, i.e. leisure centers, hotels, airports. Well guys, does Abdul express your view? Manny, what are the advantages and disadvantages of mass tourism? Basically, it's packaging culture for sale, e.g. establishment of a value in terms of labor or real monetary value for any number of markets, making culture into a commodity. An example is the establishment of historical parks and the development of a tourist industry around them. Well, obviously, Manny is talking about the commodification of culture. What do you think, guys? Do you agree with Manny? How about you, Maria? What do you think? Well, the biggest problem with mass tourism is that it damages the environment through urbanization and pollution. Another related problem has to do with how the nature of wilderness is destroyed. Since nowadays people want to be everywhere, there are many benefits too. So this is another aspect of tourism, the environment, the impact it has on the environment. What about you guys? What do you think? All right, so now let's hear from Fatma. The jobs created are only temporary. Only a specific type of people come as tourists, low and middle income, due to the holiday package deal. Besides, the upper income group may not be attracted to visiting the country. The amenities made might be too expensive for the local people to use and also might be restricted for their use. What about you guys? Weigh in on this debate. Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Now, our dialogue. Well, take a look at the pictures first to get an idea of the theme, the main ideas discussed in the dialogue. So you have a safari trip, local people, nature, tourism industry. And also don't forget to read the questions first and then listen. Tariq, hey guys, what are your plans for the holidays? Manal, well, I wish I had enough money because if I did, I would go on a safari trip to Africa. But unfortunately, I can't afford it right now, so I guess I will stay home and catch up on my reading. Noor, if I were you, I would borrow some money and make my dream come true. But I have heard that Africa has become too touristy. Tariq, what's wrong with that? Noor, well, it has an upside and a downside. The upside is that tourism can create new seasonal jobs for the local people, but the downside is that it's harmful to the environment. Tariq, I can't disagree with that, but I still think that the biggest advantage of conventional tourism is that it brings people together and creates understanding between them. Manal, I wish this were true, but this would be possible if tourists stayed for longer periods of time. But tourists usually stay for a short time and go back. Also, they don't really mix with the local people to find out more about their culture. You see, tourists are interested in taking photos of old buildings to show their friends that they have been to exotic places in Africa or the Middle East. They don't want to understand the local culture. Noor, most tourists get their idea of what they think is glamorous and unusual in the world from corporate media, which is only interested in making profit. Well, I'm going to get in touch with nature and then I will probably read some books when I get back. Direct ecotourism is certainly a better choice compared to the profit driven mass tourism. I guess the need for more profit is destroying tourism as well. Manal, there is no question about it. Now, points to ponder. Let's think deeply about these quotes. The first one, and take a look at the picture. What a contrast, right? There is one element that is more corrosive than missionaries: tourists. What do you think, guys? In what ways do you think tourists can be more corrosive than missionaries? Well, let's look at the second one. To travel is to discover that everyone is wrong about other countries. Aldous Huxley. Well, I think Aldous Huxley makes sense because we tend to have an image of other countries that is not necessarily true. So when we travel, we realize that no, the image is incorrect, it's not really true. Well, the third quote: the traveler sees what he sees, the tourist sees what he has come to see. Well, yeah, package tours, especially because everything is pre planned. You know what you're going to see and all of that. And actually, there's no fun in it, in knowing what exactly you are going to see. So be a traveler. The next one: the modern tourist expects both familiarity and strangeness at the same time. Well, I know this sounds crazy, but it actually is true. It's like traveling to a remote village and expecting to have McDonald's there. Well, there you go, familiarity and strangeness at the same time. So, what do you think of these quotes? Well, now let's finish these sentences to practice the grammar of our lesson. So, if you could change one thing in this world, what would it be? Just be the change you want to see in the world, right? So, if I could change one thing in the world, what would it be? If I had the opportunity to be different, what would you be? If I could live anywhere, and take a look at the globe and pick a place, go ahead, tell us two of your wishes. Now, our interesting talk about what's wrong with tourism. Well, you will listen to this talk and then answer the questions. But before you listen, think about these questions first, okay? What do you make of the pictures above? Just take a good look at the pictures. Pictures tell a lot of stories. And in what ways is tourism similar to prostitution? Right? What an analogy. Who is victimized by tourism industry? What's commodification of tourism? And what or who is behind this commodification of tourism? So think about these questions and then listen carefully to find the answers. Both tourism and prostitution can be considered as multi-million-dollar businesses that are contributing to poverty alleviation, job creation, and income generation. Meanwhile, both trades that are partly overlapping because of sex tourism are utterly unfair and exploitative, victimizing millions of unfortunate people worldwide and causing great harm to society. In prostitution, the victims are women, men, and children who are selling their bodies to survive. In tourism, it's local people who are also selling something to visitors in order to survive: their homes and villages, their natural and cultural heritage, their agricultural and manufactured products, their workforce, their hospitality, and their smiles, and sometimes also their bodies. Having said that, you may realize that the selling out in the tourism trade is much more comprehensive than in the sex trade. Is it acceptable, for example, to trade tourism assets as if they were bananas, coffee, or textiles? There's a reminder that trade and commerce in our capitalist economic system is based on private ownership. People or companies can claim private ownership of a hotel, restaurant, shop, golf course, tour agency, and certain other services. But notably, all tourist experiences are being traded, including those that are part of the public domain: natural, cultural, and religious sites and features, rural and indigenous villages and surrounding commons, and so on. Everything is now given monetary value and thrown onto the global market, from elephants and lions in an African safari park to long-necked hill tribe women in remote villages on the Thai-Burmese border. Not enough. Non-physical assets are also part of the tourism trade, such as rural and ethnic lifestyles, traditional festivals, songs and dances, religious ceremonies, people's friendliness and hospitality. Often, this commodification of tourism takes very subtle forms, and there seems to be no moral limitations. My argument is that tourism, all forms of tourism, including ecotourism, sustainable, fair, traded tourism, might end up as a form of prostitution with local or indigenous communities as victims. Unless we move to properly challenge the unjust and inequitable power structures involved in the tourism sector, the living and working conditions will only worsen for people in tourist destinations under the order of unfettered economic globalization. Well, now that you have listened to the talk, well, let's check your understanding. Answer these questions, okay? Grammar focus: present and real conditional. Well, last week we looked at present real conditional, and today let's look at how we can talk about imaginary situations in the present. So we have if clause and main clause, and in the if clause, simple past. In the main clause, would, could, might plus verb, base form of the verb. We can also use wish plus simple past to express our present wishes. So let's look at some of these examples. If I owned a car, I would drive to work, but I don't own a car. And this is an imaginary situation in the present. She would travel around the world if she had more money. She doesn't have more money. I wish I could help. I wish we lived in a better world. Mary would move to Japan if she spoke Japanese. I wish she were here. Well, so now let's complete the sentences using the correct form of the verbs in brackets. Well, we have come to the end of our lesson, and of course, you know what to do now. Let's look at take-home message. What have you learned from this lesson? Why is tourism the way it is? Have you ever done what typical mass tourists do? How is tourism structured and practiced in your country? What changes would you make to tourism if you were in charge? So reflect on these questions and see you next week.